You know, here at Galloway, they have a kind of a saying. They want to encourage students to take risks, and they want them to take risks in areas that they don't necessarily have natural skill or ability, but just to try it. And so they do that a lot in the area of athletics, and they actually have a motto that says, developing to your greatest potential, that is winning. So I'd like us now to shift to a race where there is no finish line. Ironman champion Scott Rigsby is joining us here to take us to that particular place with Conquer the Unthinkable. Come and join us, Scott.
Thank you. It's my privilege to be able to share with you today about doing the unthinkable, how I was able to do the unthinkable in my life, and hopefully challenge those listening around the world to be able to do the unthinkable. As you look at this picture on the screen, it's a photo from the Runner's World magazine. And if you looked at it, maybe you heard about the story and you think it's just about a guy who had this catastrophic event that happened to him and did some kind of incredible athletic achievement. But that's such a small part of the story. In our brief time today together, I'm going to briefly talk about these steps about doing the unthinkable. And when you go to the dictionary, if you were to define the term unthinkable, you would see that it would just define as something that's inconceivable. And to go on a little bit later into the definition, you're going to see that it is also something that's not to be attempted. But how many times throughout history, great men and women have been faced with this challenge of people telling them what can and cannot be done. When I started this unthinkable journey of mine, I was at the lowest point of my life, where all these things that you see on the stage, all these challenges, the lack of resources, the lack of finances, the lack of moral support from my family and friends, those were all the greatest challenges. But also what I was trying to attempt was also without the use of my lower legs. There's this world-famous race. It's called the Hawaiian Ironman triathlon. And a triathlon is just where you swim, you bike, and you run in that order in a certain amount of time. The Ironman is just a distance. It's actually the longest distance of one day triathlon events. And in 2007, I was chosen to be the first double amputee to ever attempt this race. Here's a picture of me with 1,800 of my closest friends from around the world. I'm the guy in the red shorts, swimming around, waiting for this event to happen, and thinking about what my dear 84-year-old mother had to say to me. Now, why are you doing this event? Well, my unthinkable journey has taught me many things. And today, real briefly, I'm going to talk about the 5 steps of being able to do the unthinkable. About having a dream. As an 18-year-old kid, I had a dream of going off to college, to meeting a pretty girl, maybe even a couple of pretty girls, marrying one of those pretty girls, and having a house and a family. That American dream that a lot of us all aspire to. But as an 18-year-old kid and sitting on the back of a truck, working at a little summer job, an 18-wheeler had been following us for about 10 miles and decided to pass us in this no passing zone. As we reached this narrow bridge up ahead, there was a collision, and I got knocked off the back of the truck, and I was dragged 324 feet on the pavement. My life radically changed in 9 seconds. Because that's how long it takes to be dragged 324 feet going 45 miles an hour. I would have 8 surgeries in 6 weeks, 17 a year. My right leg would be removed initially in the accident. And over the course of 12 years, after 25 surgeries, I would choose to take off my left leg below the knee and kind of reclaim my life from being a professional patient. I got into the technology field, and within 2 years, I was very successful. Became one of the top salespeople in the country for the company I was from. And then I bounced from job to job to job because I lacked vision in my life. Helen Keller has a beautiful quote. She said, "It's a terrible thing to see, but have no vision." And that was me. In Christmas of 2005, I was laying on my parents' living room floor with tears streaming down my face and not wanting to live anymore. And so I threw up this Hail Mary prayer and said, "Hey man, if you open up a door for me, then I'll run through it." Well, obviously, the heavens answered me, and I got more than I bargained for. Been doing a lot more running than I bargained. The first step is to have a dream. But we've all heard that before. But this dream has to be bigger than us. At an Ironman attempt, 3 months before the 2007 Hawaiian Ironman, I ended up being in a bike wreck at this attempt. I made it through the 2.4-mile swim, hopped on my bike, but at mile 60 I had a bike wreck. Ended up crashing, made it through the 52 miles of the rest of the bike course, ran 11 miles, but then I had to go to the hospital in an ambulance, and they took me there. And actually, the doctor came in and said, "You fractured one of the vertebrae in your back." But I rode 52 miles in that condition and ran 11 because I had a vision that was greater than me. But I was down and out, and the next day I went to this awards banquet, and 4,000 or 5,000 people were receiving their medals for finishing that race. And as I rolled in there in a wheelchair, these 5,000 people stood up and gave me a standing ovation based on the effort that I'd given the day before. And it made me realize that, yes, I do need to have a dream, but it needs to be bigger than me. It needs to transcend me. And so what I did was I went to people came back here to Atlanta, went to people that I knew that had the time, their talents, and their resources. And I imparted them my vision of what I wanted to do, that it wasn't just about me, that finishing this race would give me a platform to encourage people around the world to think about what is their unthinkable. How can I help them, our military men and women, to encourage them to, in spite of their sacrifice, to still live an active lifestyle. So the second step is to get a good support team around you. I wear shorts year-round because my legs don't get cold. And as I'm in the airport 3 or 4 times a month doing corporate speeches and visiting military bases and speaking to professional athletic teams, most people get fixated when they're in the airport. I'm walking along, minding my own business, and they're fixated on my legs, and they actually have seen people run into things when they're staring. These legs provoke emotion, from pity to inspiration. But the reality is that it's not the worst thing that happened to me, losing my lower legs. As an 18-year-old kid with one little tiny scar on my body and being ravaged later on the hot Georgia asphalt, fear entered into my life. You're looking at a guy who, over the course of 12 years, would be consumed with surgeries and trying to finish college. Gripped with fear, the last 3 years of those 12 years where I was addicted to prescription medication. Then you're looking at a guy who hadn't lost hundreds of dollars, hadn't lost thousands. I've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars because of fear. The reality is that faith is the answer. A great man from this town, Dr. Martin Luther King, said that faith is like the first step of a staircase that you cannot see, and that each step that you go up that staircase of faith, it releases the grip that fear has in our life. But you know that faith is not enough at many times. That we have to expect that there are going to be hardships along the way. That we're going to face obstacles. As I can look throughout history, all people that I aspire to be like and have greatly admired, they have faced many obstacles, and it was those obstacles that I faced when I started this journey. When I threw up that Hail Mary prayer, just like we always do, we go to our friends. And I went to my friends and said, "Hey, I'm going to do this Ironman race." They said, "That's great, we'll support you, but we need to ask you a few questions. You had to swim 2.4 miles in the ocean. Problem we see is that you don't know how to swim." That was correct. I said I would learn how to swim. They said, "You have to hop on a bike and ride through the lava fields of Hawaii. Sometimes it's 110-degree heat index, and the pavement is in excess of 100 degrees, and there are winds 30, 40 miles an hour that have blown people off the bikes. You've never ridden a bike on a set of prosthetics. You don't own a bike, and you can't even afford one of those snazzy triathlon bikes." But I said I would find me a bike and learn how to ride it. Then lastly, they said, "You've warmed up for a marathon." Most athletes have that on their bucket list. And the problem we see is that you've never run the 0.2 of the 26.2 miles. You got to do all that in 17 hours. Facing insurmountable odds along the way. But that's part of our unthinkable journey. We'll face many odds if it's a worthwhile goal and it is greater than us. And along that journey, it was from my first small distance triathlon leading up to the Hawaiian Ironman was 1 year and 8 months. During that time, I would have a third of the way into my journey, I had my prosthetic running feet stolen from me by a process from New York that wanted to blackmail me into an athletic contract. But 2 weeks later, if you're called to do something unthinkable, and it's greater than you. Watch out, because nothing can stop you. 2 weeks later, somebody gave me a free set of those fancy running feet and continued on my journey. 4 or 5 months later, here in Atlanta, I was going to be the first U.S. double amputee to run a marathon on a set of prosthetics. I showed up the hottest day on record. Not a great day to run a marathon. But my legs weren't fitting, and I had lost a lot of body fat just training for this Ironman event. And my legs were shuffling inside these sockets, and I was dumping out cups and cups of blood, finishing that race in 5 hours, but 45 minutes, dumping out blood out of my legs. I healed up. 3 months later, I would break my back at an Ironman attempt, leading up to the mother of all those obstacles, the Hawaiian Ironman. So here I am. I'm very undertrained, but I hop in the water, 400 meters in the swim, everything's going great. I get kicked in my eye gets closed shut, so I'm swimming with one eye and no legs. Webster's doesn't have a dictionary term for that. That's just me. I made it through the swim portion of the race. I hopped on the bike, rode 52 miles on a bike that was 112 miles on a bike that was 4 sizes too small for me. I looked at like one of those guys in the circus that's riding those tricycles. But I made it with 40 minutes to spare, and then hopped on the run. And through the run, I faced so many challenges. We had got the blood problem fixed, but so many times my legs were filling up with sweat issue. The next $1 million idea is to fix sweat for the 2 million amputees in the United States. But I was having to deal with those sweat issues, and to the point where I only got 3 more miles to go to finish this race, and it was literally ripping the flesh off of my legs. So how do you push through those last 3 miles? I thought about my vision, about that I'd been given an opportunity to run this race, and not only a platform to reach so many people, but also wanted to do something to honor other people, our soldiers. And then I thought lastly about my brother Tim, who had never walked a day in his life, 46 years old. And I thought, if Tim could just experience this pain that I'm feeling, then that would mean that his legs would work. And as I crossed that finish line, all the pain, all the heartache, all the disappointment, it was all washed away. Have a dream. Let it be bigger than you. Get the right people in your organization around you to buy into your vision. Operate in faith and not fear. Expect that there are going to be hardships, but all these will lead you closer to your finish line. Join with me today, October 13th, 2007, when I crossed my finish line. Thank you. I want to see other physically challenged athletes out there competing just like me. It's about breaking down barriers and being able to compete just like everybody else does. I want people to believe in something other than themselves. And that's what motivates me to finish this race. It's not about me. I want people to look at me, whether they're physically challenged, or whether they're a couch potato, or they're a weekend warrior, and go, if that guy can do it with no legs, then I can do it.
And finally, with a Lee drive all to himself, Scott Rigsby is in the spotlight. Is it possible to be an Iron Man with no legs? Yes, it is, Scott. Anything is possible. And ironically, the two letters you remove from impossible to make it so are I-M. Iron Man.